Good afternoon, everybody. It's Alex here once again from the Festival of Enterprise. Thank you for joining us today. I can see people posting up questions already. So thank you for that. That's wonderful. Hope you're all staying safe and well, coming towards the end of another week. Don't know about you. This is week 5 for me. We started like a week earlier before the official lockdown, so I've definitely been feeling it more this week than any other week. So I am a glass half full kind of person, so positivity reigns. Just been chatting to Dan, our speaker, offline, and I know we've got a lot of business owners, entrepreneur owners on here today, looking for help, looking for support. So any questions you got, guys, please post them up. Dan's going to stay on after his presentation. It's going to be about 15-20 minutes, we think, and then be answering questions after that for maybe another 15-20 minutes as well. So please post them up. I'm just going to give a brief intro for Dan. So Dan Scott is going to discuss many solutions that you should be considering using to ensure your teams are productive, collaborative, and time efficient, and can work from anywhere on any device and in a secure environment. So all things that many of us are having had to look at during this time, and talking about enabling your teams to work from home as if you're working from the office. So I will hand you over to Dan to say to you a little bit more about what he's going to be talking about today. I know he's got an intro as well, so I don't want to steal his thunder. So I'm going to hand over straight to Dan and bring up his presentation for you right now. So take it away, Dan.
Thank you very much, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the team at Complete IT in Sharp, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm Dan Scott, the Innovation and Systems Director at Complete IT, and today I'm going to be talking to you about our vision of the modern workplace and the benefits to your business of embracing new and innovative ways of working. So today we're going to cover, firstly, what do I mean by the modern workplace and how this isn't just about being on lockdown. Next, we'll talk about how offering modern and progressive ways of working are key to attracting and retaining talent within your business. And then we're going to talk about areas for you to consider when you're on your journey towards the modern workplace. And then lastly, we're going to round out with a little bit on how I see the office of the future will work. So I hope that's okay for everybody. And yeah, please do send questions in during this. The joys of doing this from, as you can see, my wife's home office. If I've got a little thumbnail of me at the bottom of the screen somewhere, I've adopted her office whilst we're all in this craziness. And so I can only see what's on my slides. So we'll have a look at the questions at the end. So do bear with us if there's a few little sharing dramas going on. So let's kick off. Firstly, today isn't just about me saying we're all on lockdown, everyone needs remote access, and you can't buy a webcam for love or money. You all know that. Everybody does. Today is about talking about how you can work smarter, work safer, and empower your teams to do what they need to do wherever they are. On a very personal level, work for me isn't somewhere that I go, and I'm sure it isn't for a great number of you listening and watching in today. Work is something I do. I don't leave the office and stop thinking about it. In fact, some of my best thinking happens when I'm not in the office. I need technology to keep pace with me and support me to be my most productive. I should be able to collaborate on a proposal with a colleague when I'm at home on a tablet while she is in her office on a PC. If I send a proposal to my client, I expect my CRM to be updated automatically. My clients expect agreements to be with them in 5 minutes, not in 5 days, and for the services within them to be ready for them to use quickly. I should be able to sign in securely on any device that I use, be that a PC, a Mac, a smartphone, or a tablet, or anything else for that matter. Data from one app should be automatically available in another without me having to open loads of different screens. Sharing should only ever be a click away, but it should be restricted so it's safe for me to use. Everything I do should be secure by design, not because I have to run through a load of hoops. This is what I mean by the modern workplace. I think we can all agree that the world as we know it is changing. To my children, their events or their friends and family are only ever a video call away. All the information that they ever need is available online. And in their view, everything that they ever need should be instantaneous. It's all that they've ever known. Technology is changing the workplace too. The number of teams that we work on or different hats that we wear has according to Microsoft's Information Worker Survey, doubled. We need to provide better means of collaboration to help us work on all these different projects, to track what we're doing, and to avoid information overload, which is really, really easy when all you're doing is relying on things like email. Who would have thought that not so many years ago that the word app would be such a big part of our modern lexicon that we all use? CCS Insights did their employee mobile technology survey with that statistic. But also what I think is incredible is that apps have been a reverse revolution, as I like to call it, in terms of technology. Now, usually in the technology sector, traditionally anyway, what happened in business eventually would filter down into the consumer space. So a good example would be email on mobile phones. What was originally the preserve of the enterprise, it started with the Fortune 500 and then moved down into smaller businesses and then eventually propagated out to everyone, way before really what we would know today as the smartphone. However, with modern technology, with the app culture that we have, that was all done in reverse. It started on people's personal devices and eventually forced the hand of IT decision makers, because people simply came in and said, I've got this is what I want to use, make it happen for me. And by the way, if you don't, then I'm just going to go off and do it myself, which is a concept that we use in the industry called shadow IT, which is where services are being consumed outside of the remit of the organization. We're going to talk about that quite a lot today in terms of the ramifications of it. This quote I thought was fantastic. We've all heard so much about so-called digital transformation in probably the last 6 to 12 months, where it's really taken on. In many things, it took on as a follow-on from people talking about cloud. They've now moved on to using exactly the same collateral, but just sort of modifying it to digital transformation, and it loses its meaning. This, I think, summed it up superbly. The two words for me in there that I think will resonate with you all are productivity and growth, because they're words that we all talk about in our organizations, no matter what industry we're a part of. I would add in scalability, in the ability to scale in either direction very quickly and without the need for large upfront investment. That's the goal, alongside, of course, with productivity and growth. So next, I'd like to talk about attracting and retaining talent in your business, which may not be immediately apparent when we're talking about modern workplace technologies and different ways of working, but just bear with me. So our people are our business. We're passionate about training, developing, and finding the right new team members to join us. I'd like to talk to you today about one group that you may not be familiar of, the group name, the nickname of, which is over there on the left-hand side, which is Generation Z or Generation Z, depending which side of the Atlantic you're listening from. Generation Z are aged between 9 and 25 and are our next generation of leaders. The technology that they have grown up with, which you can see there in that notable technologies during coming of age years, are a lot of what we're discussing today. It's collaboration, it's apps, on demand, and the cloud. Not only do they expect it, but actually, when you dig into more of these statistics and more of the questions that were asked in this specific survey from Complete, for those not familiar, Complete are the industry body of the IT industry, so it's not for profit. They aren't extremely fond of offices, it transpires. The three stats that I'd like to discuss with you today from that grid on the right-hand side there. The first one is that 44% of people within this generation see companies with no remote working policy as being old-fashioned, so they're probably very unlikely to accept roles with them. 55% of them would opt for an opportunity in a company that had a remote working policy over one that didn't have telecommuting remote working policy. I'm just substituting. 39% would take a lower compensation package for the right company with a remote working policy, which isn't great news for the ones that don't, because it's going to mean that people become more expensive compared to your competition. Now, this all rises, if you'll notice, with the people who will fall into the millennial category. But the difference with the Generation Z category is that it's all about technology for them. And that has all changed for them in comparison to the notable technologies that are for the millennial group or Gen Y. So the question is, how does your business intend on attracting the next generation of genius grads who will become the next generation of leaders? More importantly, how will you retain the rising stars that you found once you've managed to attract them? You need to have the right environment, the right mindsets, and of course, the right tool sets, I would argue. So what are they? What are the areas that we should be considering? What areas do you need to consider on your organization's journey towards the modern workplace? Let's go through a few of them now. So we're going to start with equipment, and equipment is more important than ever. I'm sure all of you have been on a video call recently or a webinar or something similar where the first 20 minutes were, can you hear me? Is this on? And can you see my screen? And it goes on and on and on. There's a good reason for a lot of that happening. And the reason is that simply we don't currently have the equipment within the majority of our teams that they need to be effective in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. But as we said at the beginning, it's not all about COVID-19 and lockdown, thankfully. It's about where we're going to in the future as well, that may just have been temporarily forced upon us in the horrible situation that we find ourselves in. So it's about giving people the tools for the job. Unsurprisingly, meetings don't go particularly well when people aren't in the room, when they haven't got the equipment that they need to project the two things that they are most required to have. That's usually their voice and themselves, their face. So webcams and microphones become paramount, as does the computer equipment that they're using to make sure that they can be at their most productive. Next, moving on to collaboration. Email is not enough. You need technologies that can enable your virtual teams to act as one. We shouldn't be exchanging documents for people to work on and pass to the next person and then wonder why we've got all out of whack when it comes to which version that people are working on. People should be able to sign in, see a single version of the truth, make the changes that they require from their area of expertise to add to the project, and then all of their colleagues can see the changes that they've made in real time. Real-time editing becomes key. Telephony. Telephony is one thing I'd like to highlight from a big takeaway that we've learned from working with our clients during the rapid period by which we all had to transition from being based primarily in offices to being based at home, and that a number of businesses were caught out by realizing that all of a sudden their telephony is purely attached to a box that's bolted to a wall somewhere. You need to liberate it so that you have the ability to take business phone calls from anywhere. Because telephony is still a very valid medium, one that's often overlooked in favor of more modern technologies such as chat and web collaboration. The telephone is still a very important part of what we do. Don't forget it, would be a tip from me, because many did. Apps, and here's the big part. I put some down the right hand side there. It's not an exhausted list. The list could be the size of the entire slide if we wanted it to be. Teams at the top. Teams is a part of the Microsoft 365 product suite, which is listed below, but I think it's big enough and important enough to deserve its own mention. When we're talking about collaboration, Teams as a business is our answer to collaboration. It's what we use internally. Teams does a number of functions for us. Firstly, in terms of chat, and chat that's dedicated to specific projects or initiatives that form their own distinct team, that we then put those chats into so that you can go in and see the history of what's happened, maybe while you've not been around, and catch up with what's going on. Also with web meetings, either one-to-one or one-to-many, that we can have via the team, file sharing, but also very crucially bringing in other applications that we use on the internet into the Teams application itself, so we're not having to jump around and reduce our productivity by having to go around and log into separate systems. We can see everything where we need it. In the reason that you're in that team is the function that you're working on. So if you're spending a day on project A, then everything you need for project A is within one place. The apps, the plans, the files, the chats, the colleagues, the meetings, everything happens in one area. That's really, really valuable. Next, on to the Microsoft 365 suite. Now, there are far too many points to mention with this. I will sum it up by simply saying collaboration in the cloud without the need for on-premises IT. Everything from chat to email to databases, everything. It would take far too long to go into, but again, forms the core of our business and is invaluable for us on a daily basis. Zoom, I've listed in there, maybe slightly controversial, but I don't want to. I wanted to spread out different brands, different technologies. Zoom is a great video conferencing solution. There is an awful lot of press going around about Zoom at the moment. I would urge you to avoid the clickbait when it comes to it. Every company has cybersecurity challenges in the modern era. It's how they deal with it that counts, not what they are. In my opinion, Zoom are dealing with it admirably. They have some challenges at the moment, that is for sure. However, it's still a very valuable tool when it comes to communicating remotely with people and bringing people in to foster a sense of team together. If, for example, you don't have the Microsoft 365 suite available, which not everybody will. Trello is project management, specifically with fantastic integrations to other apps that are about, because as we said at the beginning, what is the modern workplace? The modern workplace is having the data available that you want where you need it, and it might not necessarily come from the app that you're in. So an example may be, I need emails from my client regarding that project to be available within the project. That's where you need integrations, so it's worth a shout. HubSpot is CRM and marketing, email marketing for the modern era. It's powerful, it's easy to use, and an extremely powerful tool that, again, we use ourselves. And then lastly, Jira. Jira will be familiar to anybody who's watching from a software development standpoint. Jira exists to allow teams to collaborate no matter where they are geographically on software development projects, as if they were all in one room. Moving on to security. First thing I would advise with security is beware of free. Free means usually that you don't get any of the features that you would rely on, such as to keep things secure, such as single sign-on, whereby you can log into all your apps from one place using authentication that knows who you are, usually by taking your smartphone in order to send you an authentication message to say, yep, that's me, whoever's putting my username and password in, that's me, please go ahead and sign in. Free can also mean that the data that you put within that tool doesn't even belong to you and can be mined for analytics, sold to third parties, and used to profile people. Free is not always evil. I'd like to make that quite categorical, but you do just need to be aware of what you're getting into by using free applications, especially where there's a paid for tier. So just, as horrible as it sounds, be sure to read the T's and C's. Security should be by design and should be at the heart of everything that you do. I recently watched a presentation from a security professional that said that security needs to move to the left, and it's one that I've hung on to, it's one that I've remembered. And by that, they mean when we've got a project process and we go from left to right of design, project planning, implementation, learning, training, redevelopment, we need to move the security phase of that project to being at the left-hand side of the grid. So it needs to move to being at the design phase rather than, okay, we built this thing. How do we make sure that no one logs into it? How do we make sure the data doesn't find its way out? Move the security to the left-hand side of the conversation by having the initial conversations, right, this looks fantastic. How do we sign into it? How do we verify our users are who they say they are? What do you do with our data? Where is our data stored? Should be at the beginning of your conversation and not at the end. And lastly, and really I would argue most importantly, culture. Technology without cultural change can't solve anything. How do you bring your remote teams together and celebrate success? How do you teach your teams to adapt to this new culture? For example, somebody may not be online at 11 a.m., but they may be online at 11 p.m. What do people have to expect of each other? How does the team function? You need to set the lead and you need to establish the framework by which people will operate. Really, really, really important. When we peel back the covers and look at how companies are working today, we see a myriad of tools that are in use. There's a team of developers who is using web chat. The executives use email and telephone. The reason that multiple collaboration tools are in use is because every group is really, really unique and has their own set of functional needs and their work styles. Some will only ever use emails, while others will only ever use chat, and you'll never convince them to do anything else. And it's really important that you cater for all of them. If end users don't find the solution that they're looking for, as we said before, they're just going to go off and they will roll their own, and it will usually be a free version, and it usually won't have things like, as we said, the single sign-ons that are so important to securing your critical data, critical business data. Sharing will be difficult, and they won't be integrated into the other tools that you use. So you just end up building up these separate silos of information that then become of no use to you. Coming back to what we mentioned earlier, shadow IT, that's really the thing to watch out for. Where is your data scattered around? And I would imagine if you did a survey of the teams that you work with, you'll find a couple that you weren't aware of. And also there, I point out the time wasting of switching between applications. A properly developed cloud strategy whereby your apps are linked together and there is a flow between them. That's the important part. Everybody can go out and subscribe to 2 or 3 different applications. The key is integrating them all together and finding the right ones that fit into your workflow. That's the challenge. So lastly, what does the office of the future look like? If teams adopt an anything, anywhere, anytime mindset, then what's the purpose of the 4 walls? Firstly, on this one, how hipster is this? I realized after I'd found it, there are a number of dodgy looking beards going on in there, rather like my own. And our marketing director pointed out to me earlier that there is not a single pair of socks in the room that I can see there. Also, that lady appears to be perching on a bookshelf on the back, which I'm not quite sure I would recommend. But anyway, the purpose of this was, on the left-hand side, we have the environmental attributes. And on the right-hand side, we have the people and their purpose on this one. So a collaboration hub. The four walls become all about people getting together in order to collaborate as a team and to bring together ideas, brainstorm. It could be a shared space, and that shared space may not necessarily be just your business or your organization. The diversity and mixture that can come from some of the really modern shared working spaces that we're already seeing, I think, is fantastic. It should come with a smaller footprint and by proxy smaller costs, because not everybody is in it every day. Moving on to the people are there, want to be there rather than having to be. No more of the daily drudge. The time that they have together is completely structured, because if you were going to bring all of your teams together for a day of collaboration, there would definitely be an agenda for that, and people would be coming in order to work on those projects. It needs to be structured because people, as we said at the beginning, wear multiple hats now, and so may not be able to be involved in the same thing at the same time. So it's really important that the order of which gets worked out properly. And then lastly, the reason they're together is all about team working. There is no more, the cubicle is no more, and the single, coming in just to sit at your desk with your headphones on should be no more. There's plenty of time for being able to get solo work done and independent working. It's all about coming together and saying, right, we've got the following challenges that we need to get through. How can we get through them today, by the end of today, as a team? What can we come up with? So at this point, I would like to open up to some questions. So in order to see those, I'm just going to have to stop presenting. There we go. So that I can see the chat. Right.
Yes. What's your workspace normally like then, Dan?
Yeah. So our offices, as we were used to, are open plan, first of all, and as a business we have always had, I've been with the company for 8.5 years now, so we have always had a remote working policy, in that not so much formal, I would have to say, but that the business doesn't require people to be having to operate everything from within an office or in a certain location. So for example, on a very personal level, if I had something like this presentation to write, I wouldn't do it from within one of the offices, because I know that my colleagues coming up to me and rightly, saying, asking questions, asking for help, could you just advise on this, means that my chain of thought just gets absolutely destroyed, and then I end up with nothing done by the end of the day that I needed to do. So at those points in time, I'll usually hide away and steal my wife's office for the period of the day in order to do it. But yes, our spaces, we of course, like many people watching today, have some teams that just have to be in. They have to be in the role that they perform hasn't yet reached a place whereby it's practical to do it remotely. But then for the people that aren't in that position, it's very fluid. We moved office 18 months ago, our High Wycombe office, and as part of that move, not everybody had a desk anymore. Some desks were just delegated as hot desks. But it was done in a positive light more than anything, because we simply don't need to be. So why would you need a pen pot on the desk? You know what I mean, with a few bits in there for the one day in every 2 weeks that you might be there. So yeah, it's more of a collaborative environment now, definitely, than it was historically.
High Wycombe, where I was born. Shout out to High Wycombe.
Yeah, the chair boys.
Yes, it's funny. Like we've got like a co-office space, which is actually Ted Baker, their founder, Ray Kelvin's, his first co-working shared office space, and they're now opening them in. So that's in Bournemouth, and they're opening them in like Portsmouth, Bristol, Bath, so all kind of down the southwest. And I'm the same as you. Like if I've got something that needs to get done, that I need to like kind of like deep focus, thinking, blue sky, I'll like take myself up to another floor away from like all of my staff, because I know that I'm just going to get, Alex, do you mind just looking at this, or do you mind looking at that? And it's tricky, isn't it? And I've probably, like a lot of people, I've worked at home before, I've worked in an office before, and I came to the conclusion before the lockdown that there's definitely a balance there somewhere. I don't know if it's like, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 1 day. I don't know. It depends what you've got on, doesn't it, really, and where you need to be, and
It does.
travel. Like I go up to London a fair bit now from Bournemouth as well to see clients. So it's definitely an interesting one. And the conversations I've had with people who during this lockdown have said, right, as soon as this is over, I'm going to my boss and I'm saying.
I think also it's being intelligent about when you work as well. Like, for example, I know creatively, I'm better in the evenings than I am in the mornings.
Right.
And I've learned that through experience. So in the morning, I'm better suited to more analytical tasks. So, looking at spreadsheets and things, I'm better at when I'm fresh and I'm just got up. But when it comes to free thinking and trying to put together, chains of thoughts, or to put together a paper or anything, I'm far better in the early evening. So, I work when I know I'm going to get the best results out of myself, because that's the most important thing is what you do, not when you do it.
Yeah, no, and it's funny. I remember listening to a podcast about that recently, and I'm the opposite to you. I like morning, get up early, get my thinking, creative stuff done, and then in the afternoon I'll do, look into a spreadsheet.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, a couple of questions, which is a subject close to my heart. Given the different options that we've got, Dan's recommendation, best webinar platform, because again, this Crowdcast, and I use Zoom normally, and I never had a problem with Zoom. I've used a bunch of them in the past before, and I know our directors chose Crowdcast because it was like the most highly ranked in the customer service surveys. But we have had each week a number of issues, and I don't know if that's right across the board for all of the platforms, bandwidth, but we've had webinars crashing, and then people being locked out, like myself, can't get back in to actually tell people who are still watching what's going on, and it's been incredibly frustrating. So interested to know your experience. I had a couple of questions, because I've got a separate chat box down here as well, an ask a question box that you don't get to see. So a few around that subject, and I had a few yesterday as well. So interested to know any experience you've got in that area.
Yeah, very. With Zoom, it's always done me well, I think, for webinars. So I guess the difference between webinar and meeting is the attendee count. So when you would like something of, say, sub 25, you don't need a webinar platform. They cost more. So in order to save money, do check out how big you expect your audiences to be, and then look at the relative products accordingly. So, for example, I think around the 25 mark can be accommodated with a standard meeting, versus then the webinar platform is one to many, and you also gain a few extra niceties to have, such as being able to mute the audience, for example, rather than having to ask everybody at the beginning of the call if they could just mute, or you have to click through them all individually and select them to be muted. Webinars give you a bit more flexibility around that. But on the brand, I mean, everyone has preferences on brands, and I never want to appear to be extolling one over the other, but Zoom has done very well for me historically as a webinar platform. We use it at Complete IT. I'll be doing a very similar thing to this tomorrow with some of our clients, and we'll be using Zoom webinars for it. There's also GoToWebinar, which is another one that I've used. So again, it's just the upgraded version of GoToMeeting that allows more recipients to join the meeting, and for their settings to be preset as like muted, no cameras, things like that. So both have done very well. As part of Teams, there is a one-to-many broadcasting. I think they call it Teams Broadcast. It's not quite there yet in terms of the ready to go in the ready roll fashion, that you could be signed up for a Zoom webinar account in the next 20 minutes and you could be broadcasting by 1 o'clock. So it's not to that degree of turnkey, but it will come. It will come. So yeah, but out of everything, if I had to plump for one at the moment, I'd go for Zoom as a webinar platform.
Yeah, I'm the same, and people keep mentioning the security things. And I did have friends who hosted one of their events, but virtually, and they succumbed to that Zoom bombing, and they didn't know it was a thing before then. I think it was a bit of a shock to them all. But my experience is, you got to go with your own personal experience. A
couple of security snafus. Yeah, they had the one with the no passwords on the meetings. You can set one now, and it will be default within a couple of months. They've responded well. And the second issue they had was with some data sharing during the sign-up process to Facebook, which they've cut. So again, it's all about how companies respond, I think, to to security problems, the worst they can do is say nothing.
Yeah.
Zoom have A, admitted the problems, B, they've set a program timetable for no feature updates coming to their software. They're only going to focus on the security problems for the next 90 days. So I think they've handled it admirably. And also things have blown a bit out of proportion just because of how much it's being used and people being keen to jump on a scandal. Bit of a
Of course. Yeah, yeah. I like it as well because you can, for engagement, you can actually stream your webinar into like a Facebook group or YouTube as well, which I've been doing with like a private podcasting group I've got, and it's great for. There's a slight delay, but then you got my phone looking at it, got the laptop on, and it's great, and it's literally like that, so quick. Got some questions around CRM systems. So would you use HubSpot over and above M365 and why?
Just depends on your needs, really. So the great thing about HubSpot is that it's half marketing, half CRM. So the way that their business model is structured is that the CRM component is free of charge, with the marketing components being that's where they generate their revenue. So number one, if you want to use them as a marketing lead generation platform, which is their speciality, that means your CRM contacts live in the same database and the same entity as your lead generation, which there is always a benefit to. So when it comes to, for example, somebody clicked on an email, or somebody viewed this email, or they viewed your email on remote working options, and they clicked on this specific bit to learn more, everything lives within one silo of data. So it means that those bits are very easily available without having to look at an integration. Dynamics 365 is a fantastic platform as a CRM. It's very, very strong. And a lot of custom development can go into Dynamics 365, far more than can go into HubSpot. HubSpot is very much yes, you can add custom fields into it, and you can do some basic customization, but you can't get anywhere near the levels of customization that you can do with the Dynamics 365 platform. So it very much is a horses for courses. That said, the thing I love most about HubSpot is if you were going to sit down to design a CRM today, so a fresh sheet of paper, and let's face it, everyone's used one they didn't like, everybody. So I think it would look a lot like HubSpot. It just is very approachable. It works in a very intuitive way. And if you need that marketing lead generation funnel, because as we all know now, and I've learned from our fantastic marketing team, that in the modern world that we live in, it's all about the generation of original content, and leads that come about from that content is from trying to push outbound marketing, which just doesn't resonate with people anymore. Then HubSpot is a very good integrated platform for doing that. And if its CRM meets your needs, and it may not, that's very much down to the bespoke needs of that business and organization, then there could potentially be some savings there over not running a second CRM platform. However, there might be things that say, actually, we have our list of things that we have to have from a CRM, and it just doesn't do it, unfortunately, in which case then you can still integrate its marketing components with another CRM. I know there's Dynamics integration. I know there is, because I know a client that uses it. So a slightly woolly answer, but it just depends on the needs from a CRM. With any CRM, by the way, slightly off topic, you have to have your list of, it has to do these bits. We've got one page of A4. It has to do these things. And if it doesn't do it, I'm afraid it's just no good for me. And then moving down, there might be a slightly smaller list of, it would be nice if it did these. And then going further down the page of, if it did this, great, but it's a value add. It's got nothing to do with the process, because it's really, really easy to go into things and get a bit starry-eyed with the feature lists, and then you realize quite quickly that it just doesn't do something that your organization needs it to track or do or communicate with in some special way.
Couple of comments regarding webinar. John says GoToWebinar has never let me down for 100+. I used to use that years ago when I was in another industry. Trouble with downloading software RE firewalls, but that's not relevant now. David says the issue I've experienced with Zoom is often the initial connection, getting access to meetings, and issues with sound, but whiteboard is cool.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And the virtual background stuff as well. Teams is going to catch up on that about next week. But that's quite valuable for, especially at the moment, for some people who haven't got a working space that they can be within, and it's more appropriate for them to show something else on their background.
A couple of questions. How do you think consumer and business behavior will change after the lockdown and COVID-19?
I think there's going to take a while to gain confidence, and it's an utter nightmare, isn't it? Because we just came out of two confidence-sucking events within an election, and then of course within the first phase of leaving the European Union, whichever side of the argument you were on. And both of those events within 2019 just meant that people went, "I'll wait." You know what I mean? "Oh, maybe later. We'll hang on to it." And that could be everything from moving house to buying a car to taking a decision on a business project or change initiative. You name it, doesn't matter. But it just means that in the back of someone's mind, it just places that bit of doubt that leads to procrastination, and we'll think about it next quarter. So I think it's going to take a while before people get that confidence back. So I think a slow start. I'll be very interested to see how the government look to take us out of the current state that we're in, because we were put into lockdown in a hurry. I would argue they can't take us out of it in the same hurry, because I think people would panic. So that there's going to have to be a phased plan for getting people back to whatever normality will look like on the other side. But yeah, I think it'll be a challenging year. I think it'll be a challenging year in people businesses especially trying to, and consumers, because we're really one and the same now, of trying to put off things that aren't necessary. Cash will be king. And so hanging on to that cash will be even more important than it already has been since 2008, really, with the lack of available finances, especially for small businesses. So I think it will be a case of people putting off as many decisions as they can to conserve cash flow, whilst we slowly build up some momentum and encouragement. What we really need, by the way, to get things going again, it might sound strange, but I'm a firm believer in it, is we need a bit of good news. And what's really annoying is, like, for example, this summer, love it or loathe it, we'd have had a football tournament, and a football tournament brings people out and it sends them to barbecues, and it gives us some good news, and it gives something to talk about, and just get back to normality again.
All of those.
And we would have had, more importantly, the Olympics in Japan, and we need something like that just to get us back in, get us back going, get us talking about good things again, and just give people a little bit more of a positive mindset before things kick off in the right direction.
Yeah, I know, because it wasn't so long ago that every conversation had the B word in it, and then now it's like it never happened, did it? And it was tough. And you're starting to see, Germany today, I think yesterday, Spain and Austria just opening things up to bigger shops. And I guess it's just a big experiment, isn't it, really, just to see how that changes things with regards.
It is. And for businesses that may find themselves in an inability to trade and to really get some, to get some revenue in the door, my only advice would be to focus on that lead generation aspect. So focus on content creation, focus on telling people who you are and what you do, and focus on giving back, knowledge sharing, thought leadership, whatever you want to call it, in the period, so that hopefully when things do, when things get back on the rails again, you may be seen by a wider audience than you maybe are today, because you're more focused on service delivery or product delivery, whatever it is that your organization does. And, focus on spreading the news and getting who you are out there, and building that reputation, image, and brand.
Yeah, good point. And it's interesting. I interviewed a chap called Chris Ducker yesterday from youpreneur.com, who focuses on personal branding, that kind of thing. And he was saying, really good analogy, but he was saying, focus on being the Obi-Wan, not the Luke Skywalker at the moment. Being that, don't try and be the hero, but just again, create content. And his podcast, 7 million downloads now, and he was saying, what he's focused on is just creating that content. And my podcast, Screw It, Just Do It. I'm the same. And I'm hosting another webinar next week all about why I think now is a great time for people. Whether it's a podcast, it could be a YouTube channel, it could be a vlog, it could be a blog, whatever it is. But I think if you're personally continuing to stay in touch with your clients, even if they're not in a position to pay you, at least when you come out the other side, you'll be at the forefront of their minds, rather than those who've just curled up, died, or sat in front of Netflix in their onesies, or whatever that might be.
Definitely.
And a question about yourself and your business. So what's happened to you, business that you work with after lockdown? Are you trading, mothballing staff? Kind of mentioned, I know a lot of business, the conversations I had on these webinars have been about, it's such the hardest thing for most businesses is not just recruiting staff, but is actually retaining them. So anything you can do to actually, either keep them in the business, mothball them, whatever you can do, is going to save you so much more in the long term. How about yourself and the business that you work with? How about you cope?
So we're in the IT services industry. So we work with either companies that have no internal IT team, and we become their IT function, or with businesses that do have one that we second to give them additional skills and tools and sounding boards that they wouldn't have otherwise. And so we've been extremely busy. We saw at one point up to a 75%, I think it was, increase in calls to our service desk function just from people calling up and saying, I'm at home, help.
Wow.
What do I do now? And so we've had an awful lot of things to deal with, and really, again, to prove to our clients, because you prove your worth at the hardest time, don't you? And so it was time for us to demonstrate to people why they chose us and why we're the right partner for them. And I have to say, it's been quite humbling to watch, because you realise, that the calibre of some of the people that you work with when times are tougher than tough, you know what I mean, and some of the things that they've done, and we've pulled through in the past sort of 3 weeks or so, 3 to 4 weeks. So it's been fantastic as a business. It ruins a bit of my last slide that I put on, but we have a saying, and that's come back better, and that's what we're all focused on. So as well as now we're coming out of that period of everybody needing remote working really, really quickly, and we're having to come up with whatever we can in order to facilitate getting people's businesses able to carry on. We're now focused on our mantra of come back better, and that takes for us part of a number of key projects that we do that normally we'd say it's really important, but we're kind of busy. We've got loads going on, and so now what we want to do is focus on those. So that could be team member training. That can be some of our systems that we do. So that falls under my remit of that. There's always housekeeping in everything that you need to do. Like, wouldn't it be great if we could track these things, but we need to do this bit of work over here, so we could pull that in. And those are the kind of projects that we're now doing, as well as I said, loads of training. Equally, we launched a virtual training academy service for our clients. So we made up to 25 of their team members per business. We offered as a way of our clients offering some training out to their team members, courtesy of us. So video-based training on everything from IT to mental health, and everything in between. Of trying to. It said our mantra is come back better. So that's what we're busy with at the moment. Is what projects can we do that keep the wonderful brains that we work with stimulated, and give people something to fill their days with, and give us something so that when we're out of this, we're in a far better place. Our footings are surer, because our documentation is better than it was. Our platforms are more better populated, and we've removed some of the data that we shouldn't have because it's not needed anymore. Things like that.
Yeah. Nice. Another question. So what do you think we should be prioritizing over the next 4 weeks? And I suppose maybe that comes into the decision we're expecting today to extend the lockdown for another 3 weeks, and then thinking, another week beyond that, maybe. I mean, maybe it'll be longer, who knows? But maybe be looking at what's happening in Germany and Austria with keen interest and seeing what the results are. But yeah, what do you think we should be prioritizing for the next 4 weeks when it comes to the modern workplace?
Yeah, so first of all is having a look at, try and compartmentalize what you have. So you might be thinking, by the way, everyone's got one somewhere, the horrible old database, and it could be an old finance system, it could be an old contact system, there's always an old thing hanging around somewhere. That means you might have a box whirring in the corner of the office that if the box goes off, the thing stops working. And it's also the thing, of course, that we all say, oh, it's really old and no one ever uses it anymore. But if it goes off for longer than 10 minutes, it always creates a problem. Yeah. So start coming up with those things that, okay, these are the list, you know what I mean, the proverbial list of what can we do with them. So what's in them, who uses it, and where can it go? What would be better? How can we liberate ourselves from it, and start coming back to the point of the slide I made earlier with the laptop in the middle with the bits with the wheel going round, of what processes can we put in place? What apps could we use? What collaboration tools could we be using? At the moment, if you aren't having any kind of team collaboration where people can work on a central point, aka not exchanging email chains, what is it that you could do? Now, there are loads of flavors of those. Obviously, I spoke about earlier about Microsoft 365 and specifically the Teams component there, but then there's also things such as Slack. You've got Trello on the project side of things. You've got Jira over on the app development side. You've got HipChat for people who use Salesforce. There are loads and different ways of which you can do it, and it has to be what works best for you and what's the most appropriate for your organization and the other apps that you use. So I'd be thinking about, the old things that you've got, where they could go off to, where the dash lines could go off to, and also about ways and means that you can look to bring people together. Everyone's saying at the moment, it really is true, but it gets bandied around a lot. You have to over communicate at times like this. Never assume that your message has got through to the people who you work with, work for you, whatever the relationship is. And so find ways of bringing people together. It could be daily huddle meetings. It could be weekly catch-ups. We do a virtual pub every Friday afternoon. Everyone's encouraged to come along and just relax for a bit and talk to your team members, things like that, to try and keep things going. So applications, things that you really could do with getting rid of, a bit like I said, our come back better mantra and the projects that we're planning. Come up with your project list of things that you can keep going. If we are going to be doing this for another 3 to 4 weeks, how can you deploy the resources that you've got to fix things that otherwise they'd be too busy to do? See if you can come up with your list of that. Also, collaboration, if you haven't already got it. And if you've really got some time left over at the end, or you really need more to do, or you've already solved all those problems, have a think about security and have a think about how what safeguarding what you've currently got. And that could be, for example, let's say you're using Microsoft 365 and Teams at the moment. You haven't got any old applications kicking around. Are you using multi-factor authentication in English for non-IT people, because they're like always going all IT now? Multi-factor authentication is really simple. We've been logging onto our banks with it for years. It's, are you who you say you are? So when you're logging in, we've had the little things, you pop your card in, tap the PIN number in, it gives you another number. That's multi-factor authentication. So it can be done with a text message, it can be done with an app, and when you're logging into your email, your username and password, but the phone proves that you are who you say you are, because it's going to need something off your phone. So look at implementing something like that, locking down what you have, because as we always see today, cybersecurity is very likely to be an inconvenience to a business, and hopefully one that doesn't cost you too much money in the long term. But at the moment, hackers are obviously preying on insecurities of people, and they're no longer sat next to each other to say, does this email look real?
True.
You haven't got that anymore. So another thing to add to the list.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Slack and Trello, actually. I use both of those with my teams. I think they're great.
Fantastic. They are fantastic.
Cool. Everybody's stayed with us for the duration, so that is excellent. Any last questions, post them up. If not, I will just let you know, next webinar today, just going to wrap up now with Dan, but 2 p.m. I've got James Sinclair, who's going to be talking about how his 18-year-old business had to be hibernated overnight, 400 plus staff furloughed, and what steps they've taken to pivot fast. James is the award-winning CEO of the Party Man Group, home of 7 much-loved family-based brands, which welcome 1 million customers through the doors of their attractions every year, generating around 13 million in annual sales. So really interesting conversation. He's also won Young Entrepreneur of the Year before, Growing Business of the Year, many other awards. And I've been looking forward to speaking to James for a while now. I've been following him for quite a while over the last couple of years. So glad to get him on. If you can join us then at 2 o'clock, that would be great. Back here, same platform, Crowdcast. We've managed our one without any blips on the technology front, which is wonderful to see. I've toggled my video a few times when I've seen it getting a bit pixelated, so I think that might have saved us a little bit of bandwidth. But thanks, Karen. Thank you, David. Thank you for the nice compliments. That's great. And yeah, any last words, Dan? Otherwise, we will say goodbye and hopefully have you on again here very soon.
Yeah, exactly. Let me just try sharing this again, because I had one left. So let me just do that. There we go. So yeah, just some contact details there. If anyone here would like to explore further how we at Complete IT can help you and your organization work smarter, safer, we'd love to hear from you. Please drop us an email. One of the team will get in touch. All, of course, with absolutely no obligations. We'd just love to help. And I'd like to leave you all with two things, one of which we've already discussed, that we as a business encourage all our teams to come back better. I implore you to do the same. Let's come out of the block sprinting, both as organisations and as a country. I think it's really, really important. And then lastly, of course, it would be very inappropriate to do anything today without saying stay home, stay safe, and protect our amazing NHS. So thank you very much, everybody, for giving up your time today. That was it from me.
100%. Thank you very much, Dan. That was my pleasure. And I will also say thank you very much. If you'd like to connect offline, it's Alex Chisnell on LinkedIn, easiest way to get hold of me. And yeah, hopefully you can join us at 2 o'clock. Also got 2 webinars tomorrow as well at 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. to round out the week. Thank you for joining us here at the Festival of Enterprise.